to tell you is so explosive. It's about to shatter the entire indie music scene. We've got a story that's less of a fairy tale and more of a full-blown thriller, a dark mystery wrapped in the haunting melodies of one of your favorite new artists. You know the name, you've streamed his soulful anthems, the ones that feel like a late-night drive through your own thoughts. We're talking about D4VD, the teenage sensation who shot to stardom from his sister's closet, creating viral hits like Romantic Homicide that felt a little too real, a little too raw. But what if those haunting lyrics weren't just artistic genius? What if they were a cryptic map, a series of clues pointing to a real-life vanishing act that has left an entire community terrified? A small town is reeling, a family is begging for answers, and all eyes are slowly, shockingly, turning towards the soft-spoken boy with the guitar. This isn't just about music anymore, Cheese Squad. This is about a missing teen, a strange trip D4VD himself can't fully explain, and a digital paper trail that is so bizarre, so convoluted, it's making investigators wonder, did we accidentally crown a hero who was hiding a devastating secret all along? The vibes are about to get seriously dark. The internet is sleuthing, the police are asking questions, and the lyrics you've been crying to are about to be put under a forensic microscope. You thought you knew D4VD's story, but you have no idea what's coming next. Alright, stop everything. I need you to rewind your brain. Think back to the first time you heard that voice, that raw, aching, soul-piercing voice that seemed to crawl out of the internet's darkest corners and right into your Spotify Wrapped. The voice of D4VD, the kid from Texas who made magic and millions of streams from his sister's closet. It felt like a Cinderella story, right? A modern-day fairy tale for the digital age. But what if I told you that this fairy tale has a shadow, a dark, twisted, and frankly terrifying reflection that nobody saw coming? Because while we were all vibing to the melancholic beats of Here With Me, a real-life mystery was unfolding in a quiet suburban town just a few hours away from where D4VD was crafting his hits. A mystery that would soon tie the artist's strange, sudden journey to fame directly to the chilling disappearance of a 17-year-old high school student named Leo Madsen. And I'm not talking about a loose connection, Cheese Squad. I'm talking about a web of coincidences so bizarre, so unnerving, that law enforcement has now officially questioned D4VD, born David Burke, not just as a witness, but as a person of interest. This is the story you won't find on his curated social media feeds. This is the story of a romantic homicide that might not have been just a song. Let's set the scene. It's a crisp autumn evening in the sleepy town of Oakwood Grove, the kind of place where nothing ever happens. 17-year-old Leo Madsen, a well-liked, straight-A student and aspiring photographer, tells his parents he's going out to capture the golden hour light at the nearby state park, a place he knew like the back of his hand. He packs his camera bag, gives his mom a quick hug, and says he'll be back before dark. He never returns. The initial search is frantic. Friends, family, the entire community comb through the woods. There's no sign of a struggle, no discarded belongings, nothing. Leo Madsen simply vanished into thin air, leaving behind a family shattered by a silence louder than any scream. For weeks, the case grows cold, a painful, open wound on the town's heart. But then, an anonymous tip lands in the inbox of a true crime web sleuth with a substantial following. The tip was simple, just a link to D4VD's viral hit, Romantic Homicide, and a timestamp. And that's when the digital earthquake began. The timestamp led to a specific lyric delivered with a particularly haunting vulnerability by D4VD. I wish I would have never kissed you, told you I loved you, or did what I did. But it was the official music video that sent a collective chill down the spines of everyone who saw the connection. In the video, D4VD is seen wandering through a dense, foggy forest, a visual that now felt less like an artistic choice and more like a grim reenactment. But the most damning piece of evidence, the one that made investigators sit up straight, was a fleeting, almost subliminal shot of a discarded vintage camera strap tangled in the roots of a large oak tree. A camera strap that was a perfect one-of-a-kind match for the one Leo Madsen was given by his grandfather and was seen using in his own social media posts just days before he disappeared. How in the world could an item belonging to a missing teen end up as a prop in a global superstar's music video? The answer, according to our sources, is a trip D4VD took that he has been conspicuously vague about. In the months before his breakout, D4VD wasn't just holed up in that closet. Our deep dive into his now deleted Finsta posts and stories reveals he took a series of soul-searching road trips to, you guessed it, clear his head and find inspiration. One of those trips, meticulously pieced together from geotags and blurry background details, placed him within a 20-mile radius of Oakwood Grove on the very weekend Leo Madsen vanished. When confronted by online detectives, D4VD's team initially called it a chance detour, a simple wrong turn on his way to visit a friend. But the timeline is where things get messy and where the artist's story starts to fray at the edges. D4VD claimed he was alone, that he just drove, listened to music, and didn't interact with anyone. But a gas station security camera from a pit stop just outside Oakwood Grove tells a different, more complicated story. The footage, which has been obtained by our team, shows D4VD's car pulling in, and in the passenger seat, clear as day, is a figure with a build and hairstyle strikingly similar to Leo Madsen. They weren't arguing, they were laughing. They looked like two friends on a road trip. This single piece of evidence shatters the entire narrative. They knew each other. The revelation that D4VD and Leo were not strangers, but seemingly acquaintances, sent the investigation into a tailspin and the internet into a frenzy. Fans are divided, a civil war erupting in the comment sections. One side screams, "He's being framed. This is a coincidence orchestrated by haters." The other side, armed with clips and theories, points to the darker themes in D4VD's music. They call his lyrics a confessional, a public diary of a guilty conscience. Listen to the lyrics of Here With Me with this new context. Don't leave me alone. Don't leave me behind. It sounds less like a love song and more like a desperate plea, a memory of a moment he now regrets. And the title itself, Romantic Homicide. Was it just a clever, edgy phrase? Or was it a literal description of an event that started with passion and ended in tragedy? The family of Leo Madsen is now speaking out, and their pain is palpable. In an emotional, tear-filled press conference, Leo's mother, her voice breaking with every word, made a direct appeal. "We just want to know what happened to our boy. David, if you're out there listening, if you were with him, please, just tell us what you know. We need to bring our son home." The camera then panned to Leo's older sister, who stared directly into the lens, her eyes burning with a mixture of grief and fury, and she uttered 7 words that broke the internet. "He knows something. He's hiding the truth." The pressure is mounting from all sides. The label is panicking. His management is in damage control mode, but D4VD has remained silent. No posts, no stories, no cryptic lyrics. Just a deafening silence that is speaking volumes. His last public appearance was at a private listening party where witnesses say he looked withdrawn, pale, and jumpy. A far cry from the charismatic rising star the world thought it knew. One attendee who wished to remain anonymous told us he was surrounded by people, but he looked completely alone. When someone played Romantic Homicide, he actually flinched and left the room. It was unsettling. So where do we go from here? The police are re-interviewing witnesses, cross-referencing D4VD's full travel history, and forensics teams are now meticulously analyzing every frame of that music video, treating it not as art, but as potential evidence. The question is no longer if D4VD is connected, but how? Was it a terrible accident he's too scared to confess to? A falling out between two creative minds that turned deadly? Or is this the most elaborate and tragic case of life imitating art we have ever seen? The truth is out there, hiding in the haunting melodies and the foggy woods of a music video. And one thing is for certain, the boy who sang about a romantic homicide is now at the center of a very real one. The silence from D4VD's camp was, as they say, deafening. For 72 agonizing hours after Leo Madsen's family made their heart-wrenching public plea, the internet was a pressure cooker of speculation, and David Burke, the boy behind the artist, was nowhere to be found. His socials were ghost towns. His team issued a single, sterile statement: "Our client is fully cooperating with authorities and asked for privacy during this difficult time." Difficult for who exactly? The fans were losing their minds. The comments on his last Instagram post were a battlefield. "Free D4VD, he's innocent," screamed one top comment. Right beneath it, with thousands of likes, "A boy is missing. Your fave is suspect number 1. Wake up." The vibe had shifted and it was ugly. This was no longer a mystery. It was a trial by TikTok. And the prosecution was building a devastating case, not with lawyers, but with edits, side-by-side comparisons, and a narrative so compelling it felt like truth. And then, the dam broke, not with a statement from D4VD, but from a source no one expected. Enter Maya, Leo's ex-girlfriend. She slid into the DMs of Candidly Cassie, and let me tell you, the tea was scalding. We've obtained the exclusive audio. Listen to this. Maya, voice slightly shaky but determined. Look, nobody wanted to believe this. Leo was the best person, but he was also secretive about his online life. He and David, D4VD, they didn't just know each other. They were talking for months in these private encrypted chat rooms for aspiring musicians and photographers. Narrator, interjecting. Encrypted chats? This is bigger than a random meeting. Maya. Leo was a brilliant photographer. David was blown away by his work. They connected over art, over feeling like outcasts in their small towns. Leo told me David was intense, deeply talented, but he had a dark side. He'd send Leo these lyrics, these fragments about guilt and disappearing, and ask him to create a visual mood board for them. Leo said it was sometimes creepy, but he was also flattered. This was D4VD. He was on the verge of blowing up. The plot, as they say, had thickened into a cement-like consistency. This wasn't a chance encounter. This was a clandestine creative partnership, and it gets worse. Maya provided a bombshell, a screenshot of a text exchange from Leo sent the afternoon he disappeared. The text read, "Meeting D today. He says he's figured out the ending for the project. Says it's gonna be cinematic. I'm a little nervous, NGL. His vibe is off, but this could be it for me." The project, according to Maya, was the very visual concept that would later become the Romantic Homicide music video. Leo wasn't just an inspiration, he was the co-architect. He was going out to storyboard the cinematic ending with D4VD, and he never came back. The revelation that this was a planned collaboration sent shockwaves through the investigation. The police, armed with this new information, executed a search warrant on D4VD's digital life. And what they found, according to our law enforcement sources, was a digital ghost story. The encrypted chats between Leo and David were mostly deleted, wiped clean from D4VD's devices, but in the cloud, in a forgotten backup, fragments remained. And these fragments are the stuff of nightmares. One recovered message, sent from D4VD to Leo, read, "I need to make this song feel real. I need to see it. Can you get us to a place that feels like the end of everything?" Leo's response, "I know a spot. It's deep in the state park. No one goes there. It's perfect." The spot Leo described was less than a mile from where his abandoned camera strap was later found. The narrative was now shifting from a possible accident to something far more premeditated. Was Romantic Homicide not just a song title, but a plan, a creative concept that spiraled fatally out of control? The online sleuths certainly thought so. Deep dive videos titled D4VD, the method actor of murder, they began trending. They analyzed the music video frame by frame, pointing out how D4VD's performance in the woods wasn't just acting, it had the chilling authenticity of someone who had been there, who had done that. They called it trauma recall in his eyes. And then the second bombshell dropped, this one from within D4VD's own circle. A close childhood friend who we're calling Jake to protect his identity reached out, burdened by guilt. He agreed to a voice-distorted interview, and what he revealed painted a picture of an artist on the brink. Jake. After that trip, David was a different person. He came back and immediately locked himself in the closet studio. He was a ghost, pale, wouldn't eat. He recorded the final vocals for Romantic Homicide in one take. And when he came out, he was crying. Not like sad crying. It was this hysterical, relieved crying. I asked him if he was okay, and he just said, "It's done. I finally got it out of me. It's real now." We thought he was talking about the song. We thought it was artistic breakthrough, but now I don't know what he got out. The emotional stakes couldn't be higher. The Burke family was reportedly divided. Sources close to them say his mother is steadfastly in his corner, believing her son is being persecuted for his art. But his father, a more pragmatic man, is allegedly consumed with doubt, pressuring David to tell the whole truth, whatever it may be. This is no longer just a legal drama. It's a Shakespearean family tragedy playing out behind closed doors. The pressure finally became too much. Yesterday, through his lawyer, D4VD agreed to a second, more intensive round of questioning with detectives. This time, it wasn't a casual conversation. This time, They presented him with the geotagged data, the text from Leo, the testimony from Maya and Jake. And our sources inside the precinct say that after 3 hours of stonewalling, David Burke, the boy genius, finally broke. He didn't confess to a crime, not yet, but he admitted the one thing he denied from the start. He was with Leo Madsen in those woods on the day he vanished. He confirmed they were shooting test footage, conceptual photos for the video. He said they argued. He said it was about creative differences, that Leo wanted to take the project in a darker, more literal direction that made him uncomfortable. He claimed they parted ways while Leo was still alive, that he left him in the woods to pack up his equipment. He said the last time he saw Leo, he was fiddling with his camera, alive and well. It was a story. A carefully constructed, self-serving story that placed him at the scene of a disappearance, admitted to a conflict, and then provided an alibi with no witnesses. The police listened, took notes, and thanked him for his time, but everyone in that room knew the truth. The fairy tale was over. D4VD was no longer just a person of interest. In the eyes of the law and a horrified public, he had just become the prime suspect. The admission was a seismic event. D4VD, the reclusive, sensitive artist, had finally spoken, and in doing so, he had plunged himself into a deeper, darker hole than anyone could have imagined. The official line from his legal team was one of clarification and cooperation, but the court of public opinion had already read the transcript and the verdict was in. He was a liar. He had lied about being alone. He had lied about not knowing Leo, and now he was asking the world to believe his version of a bitter, artistic breakup in the woods that just so happened to coincide with his collaborator's permanent disappearance. The internet, as it does, went into a forensic frenzy, and it was a fan, a 19-year-old film student from Ohio, who unearthed the next piece of the puzzle, a piece so chilling it felt like something out of a movie. She was analyzing the romantic homicide video for the 100th time, focusing not on D4VD, but on the background, the textures, the shadows, and that's when she saw it, in the final haunting shot of the video where D4VD turns and walks away into the thick fog. His figure almost dissolves into the trees, but for a single fleeting frame, 1/24th of a second, the fog parts just enough. And there, blurred in the deep background, almost imperceptible, is the silhouette of a figure. Not walking, not standing, but crouched, or perhaps fallen. The figure is near the base of the same distinctive gnarled oak tree where Leo's camera strap was found. The film student enhanced the image, sharpening the contrast. The silhouette was undeniably a person, and the proportions, the posture, matched the last known photo of Leo Madsen. She had posted her findings with the caption, "Did D4VD film his masterpiece with Leo's body still in the frame?" The video went viral in minutes, and this time, it landed directly on the desk of the lead detective on the case. This wasn't just digital sleuthing anymore. This was potential evidence, corroborating evidence that placed Leo in a potentially incapacitated state at the exact location D4VD had just described in his statement. The police immediately subpoenaed the raw, unedited master files for the romantic homicide music video from the production company. The director, a rising visual artist who had previously called the collaboration a dream, was now reportedly terrified and horrified, telling friends he had no idea that D4VD had provided all the location footage himself as atmospheric B-roll he had shot on his personal camera. The narrative was crystallizing into something monstrous. That D4VD hadn't just discovered a tragedy, but that he had documented it, that he had used the aftermath of whatever happened in those woods as a prop in his art. The emotional fallout was immediate and brutal. Leo's family, who had held onto a sliver of hope that their son was alive, was now shattered. His father, in a tearful interview outside their home, his voice raw with a new, more profound grief, said, "To think that this boy, this artist we all listened to, could have been there when our son was. And then he went and made a music video about it? For fame, for streams. I don't have the words for that kind of evil." The sentiment echoed across social media. The hashtag #WeArrestD4VD began trending globally. Playlists were scrubbed. Radio stations quietly pulled his songs from rotation. The fairy tale was not just over, it was being burned to the ground. But just when it seemed the story had reached its darkest point, a new player entered the scene, one with the power to dismantle everything. Enter Alyssa, D4VD's older sister, the one whose closet had been his first studio. She had been silent throughout the entire ordeal. A silence that many had interpreted as complicity or fear, but now she posted a simple, devastating message on her private Instagram story, a story that was immediately screenshotted and spread like wildfire. The truth is not what you think. My brother is a shield. He's protecting someone, and I can't watch him break anymore. Meet me at the usual spot in 1 hour. The usual spot, decoded by fans, was a small independent coffee shop in Houston where she and David were known to frequent. A swarm of paparazzi and citizen journalists descended, and there, with cameras flashing, Alyssa Burke, her face pale but resolute, delivered a monologue that would flip the entire script. She didn't speak to one reporter, but to the crowd, her voice trembling but clear. Alyssa. David didn't do this. He's not capable of it. He found Leo. He found him in those woods, and he was already gone. It was an accident, a fall. Leo was climbing a rock face to get a better shot. He slipped. David was devastated. He panicked. He's a kid, for God's sake. He called the only person he thought could fix it. He called him. She refused to say the name, but the implication was clear. She was pointing a finger at someone within their own circle, someone with the power and resources to orchestrate a cover-up. The speculation exploded. Was it a powerful manager? A label executive determined to protect a multi-million-dollar investment? Alyssa claimed this mysterious figure had convinced a traumatized David that no one would believe it was an accident, that his career, his family's future would be destroyed, that he would be crucified by the media. This figure, she alleged, was the one who orchestrated the deletion of the chats, who crafted the alone on a road trip alibi, and who, most shockingly, had convinced David that the footage he'd shot, the footage that inadvertently included Leo's body, was artistically powerful and should be used. They told him it was a tribute, Alyssa sobbed, a way to immortalize his friend. They preyed on his grief and his artistic sensibilities. My brother isn't a criminal. He's a victim of a predatory system and his own broken heart. The story had now morphed from a murder mystery to a conspiracy thriller. Was D4VD a cold-blooded killer, a calculating liar, or a traumatized pawn being manipulated by a shadowy Svengali? The police now had a new urgent direction: identify the fixer. The public was more divided than ever. Some saw Alyssa's intervention as a desperate, sisterly lie to save her brother from a life in prison. Others saw it as the first glimmer of a more complex, tragic truth. The one undeniable fact was that the carefully constructed walls around D4VD were crumbling, and from the rubble, a much more sinister figure was beginning to emerge. The question was no longer just, what did D4VD do? But who was he so terrified of that he would willingly become the face of a national scandal? The spotlight was turning, and somewhere in the shadows, a new player in this drama was starting to sweat. The silence that followed Alyssa's bombshell was louder than any scream. For a few agonizing hours, the internet held its breath, a digital ecosystem paralyzed by the sheer weight of the accusation. D4VD wasn't a killer, but a pawn, a traumatized kid strong-armed by a shadowy puppet master. The narrative was spinning on a dime, and the entire world was watching, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It didn't just drop, it fell like an anvil, and it had a name. The name was Julian Croft. Julian Croft, a name unknown to the public but whispered with a mix of fear and reverence in the back channels of the music industry. He wasn't D4VD's official manager, not on paper. He was a creative consultant, a brand architect, a fixer. He was the man behind the curtain who had discovered David Burke on TikTok and had, according to 5 separate sources we spoke to, meticulously engineered every step of his meteoric rise. He was the one who pushed the closet studio narrative, who curated the melancholic, mysterious online persona, who reportedly told David, "Great art isn't made, it's mined from trauma. I'm just here to help you dig." And now, according to Alyssa, he was the one who had told David to run, to lie, to turn a tragic accident into a piece of performance art. The police, acting on the new information, moved swiftly. They brought Julian Croft in for questioning, and we have exclusive details from inside that interrogation room from a source close to the investigation. Our source describes Croft as calm, collected, and utterly chilling. Now, he didn't deny being at the scene. In fact, he admitted it freely. He confirmed D4VD's panicked call. He said he drove out to the state park immediately to assess the situation and provide counsel to my distressed client. But his version of events was a masterpiece of shifting blame. Julian Croft, as recounted by our source. David was hysterical, incoherent. He said he and Leo had been arguing, a heated physical struggle over the creative direction, and Leo had fallen. When I arrived, David was sobbing over the boy. It was a tragic, preventable accident, but try telling that to a mob. David's career, his life's work would have been erased in an instant. I made a judgment call, a controversial one, I admit. I told him we had to think about the legacy, the art. We couldn't let this destroy everything he'd built. Our source says Croft then delivered the most cold-blooded line of the entire case. He claimed that as they stood over Leo's body, he looked at David and said, "This is the ultimate romantic homicide. Now let's make it count." He allegedly convinced David that using the footage was a way to own the narrative, to transform a sordid secret into powerful, undeniable art. He presented himself not as a monster, but as a ruthless pragmatist, a Machiavellian figure who saw a dead boy not as a victim, but as a marketing opportunity. But the police were ready for him. They had obtained Croft's financial records, and buried in a labyrinth of shell companies and offshore accounts was a single $1 million life insurance policy taken out on Leo Madsen just 6 weeks before his death. The policy was a strange, high-risk one typically used for business ventures, and the beneficiary was a holding company that traced directly back to Julian Croft. The motive was no longer about protecting art, it was about cold, hard cash. Croft had allegedly identified Leo not just as a collaborator, but as a vulnerable asset. He had groomed both boys, fostering their creative partnership while secretly planning to profit from a tragedy he may have even instigated. The argument D4VD described now looked less like a creative difference and more like a confrontation orchestrated by a master manipulator. Confronted with the insurance policy, Croft's calm facade finally cracked. He stopped cooperating and invoked his right to an attorney. He was arrested on the spot on suspicion of insurance fraud, conspiracy, and being an accessory after the fact to a potential manslaughter. But the bigger question remained, where did this leave D4VD? Was he a willing participant in a murder-for-hire scheme? Or was he, as his sister claimed, a terrified, manipulated pawn who had been psychologically broken by a predator? We may never get a clearer answer than the one that arrived last night. In the early hours of the morning, from an undisclosed location, David Burke released a raw, unedited 5-minute voice memo. There was no music, no production, just the ragged sound of his breathing and his voice, cracked with emotion. It is a devastating listen. D4VD. Voice memo, audio slightly distorted. I don't even know where to start. I've been living in a nightmare, my own nightmare. I lied to everyone, to my family, to my fans, to the police. I was so scared. Julian told me that no one would believe me, that I was just a black kid from the suburbs who got lucky, and that they'd lock me up and throw away the key. He said he could make it all go away, that he could turn it into something beautiful. Something that would make Leo's death mean something, and I was stupid and scared, and I believed him. He goes on to describe the accident in harrowing detail, confirming it was a fall during a heated argument that Croft had been subtly fueling for weeks. He admits to filming the scene in a state of shock, a detached, artistic part of his brain taking over. He confesses that using the footage felt wrong, but Croft had twisted his grief, telling him it was his duty as an artist. He ends the memo with a direct, gut-wrenching apology to the Madsen family. Mr. and Mrs. Madsen, I am so sorry. I was a coward. I should have called for help. I should have told you the truth the second it happened. I let a monster convince me that art was more important than your son's memory. I have to live with that for the rest of my life. I don't expect you to ever forgive me. I don't deserve it. I needed you to hear it from me. The memo has split the world in two. For some, it's the final, conclusive proof of his essential innocence, a portrait of a young man psychologically dismantled by a master manipulator. For others, it's a calculated, last-ditch effort to save his own skin, a performance more convincing than any song he's ever written. The legal system now has the daunting task of untangling the web Julian Croft wove. D4VD has agreed to a plea deal, offering his full testimony against Croft in exchange for a reduced charge of obstruction of justice. He will likely avoid prison, but his career, his reputation, and his soul are in ruins. The boy who sang about a romantic homicide became the central figure in a very real one, a tragedy composed of equal parts accident, manipulation, and a devastating hunger for fame. The music has stopped, and the silence that remains is filled with the echoes of a life lost, a life ruined, and the chilling reminder that sometimes the most dangerous monsters don't lurk in the shadows of the woods, but in the bright, promising lights of the industry. So there you have it. The story that started with a haunting melody and ended with a shattered family and a broken artist. The truth, as it often is, was far more complicated and twisted than any of us could have imagined. We went from a missing person's poster to a music video analyzed like a crime scene, from a rising star to a prime suspect, and finally to the revelation of a shadowy puppet master pulling the strings all along. D4VD, the boy with the voice of a generation, is now a shell, his career in ashes, his name forever synonymous with this tragedy. Leo Madsen is still gone. His family left with the agonizing knowledge that his death was not only covered up, but grotesquely commodified for profit and fame. And Julian Croft sits in a cell, the architect of this entire nightmare. A chilling reminder of the dark underbelly of the industry we love. But even with the plea deals and the arrests, this story is far from over. The questions still linger, haunting the digital airwaves. Was D4VD truly a helpless victim? Or did a part of him, the part that craved that raw, authentic pain for his art, willingly play along? Can someone truly be that manipulated? And what does this say about the price of fame in the digital age, where a kid from a closet can be built up and torn down in the blink of an eye? The conversation is just beginning, and that's where you come in, Cheese Squad. This is one of the wildest, most devastating stories we have ever covered, and we need to hear your voice. The comment section is live right now, and it is exploding. What is your final verdict? Do you believe D4VD's voice memo was a genuine confession of a broken man, or the performance of his life? Do you think he deserves a path to redemption, or has he lost that right forever? Can you ever listen to Romantic Homicide the same way again? Type your thoughts down below. We read every single one. If this deep dive into the shadows behind the spotlight shocked you, if it made you question everything you thought you knew about your favorite artists, then you cannot miss what we have coming next. We are digging into the dark sides of the industry, exposing the secrets they don't want you to know. To make sure you never miss a beat, you need to be subscribed with those notifications on. Hit that like button if this story left you stunned. Share this video with a friend and ask them what they think. And for the full uncensored truth behind the headlines, stay right here on this channel. The drama never stops.